Good evening, everyone. The meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice of compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's office in preparation of a special meeting notice dated June 22nd, 2020, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements.
Thank you. And I think we're ready for roll call whenever you are, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Ms. Hairston.
Here.
Ms. Little.
Here.
Mr. Naidu.
Here.
Mr. O'Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Vartan.
Present.
President Fox.
Here. Okay, now if everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll just do it together. I've got my flag there. Okay. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag,
of the United States of America.
And to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
Liberty
and justice
for all.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I just want to explain briefly why we are holding this special meeting. We're doing this to approve 11 measures to allow for expanded outdoor dining options for Summit businesses and reopening. So far we've approved 18 sidewalk cafe expansions, but the things that we're going to be addressing tonight are things where the applications were not ready for previous meetings because the applications were not completed. And there are certain categories of approvals that that council actually needs to approve. Certain outdoor cafe approvals can happen through the clerk's office and through city staff. But when we are dealing with expansion of liquor licenses or closure of streets or when we're dealing with parklets, the council must weigh in on those. So just to be clear that after we vote on these things tonight, once these applications are approved by council, the city still needs to issue the proper permits and to install the traffic barriers for the road closures and the parklets. So no one is going to be able to go out tomorrow and put out their tables and chairs and get started until they go through the process. So I just want to clarify that. Also, I wanted to note that in the interest of assisting our Summit restaurants, we have approved the waiver of outdoor dining fees for those restaurants who don't have a liquor license. And that was at our June 23rd council meeting. However, pursuant to city ordinance, restaurants with a liquor license must enter into a license agreement to use city property for outdoor dining, and they must also pay a license fee. It's usually based on the assessed value of the square footage of outdoor space. But when we started doing those calculations, we saw that the numbers were pretty high if you calculated using that methodology. And the purpose of doing this is not for the city to make money. The purpose of this is for us to help the businesses. So we proposed an alternative method for calculating this license fee based on the number of seats in the outdoor cafe. So this new lower licensing fee will be included as a part of each of the resolutions that we consider for sidewalk cafes, outdoor street dining, and parklet dining tonight. We will have a general resolution to apply the same alternative fee structure to all outdoor cafes that have been approved retroactively and also all those going forward. And that will be either at the July 8th or the subsequent July meeting, and there will be refunds issued at that point, assuming that resolution passes. Council recognizes these are unprecedented times, and that these outdoor dining locations require a careful weighing of competing interests of the restaurants, the residents, and other businesses. And that's why we felt that it was very important to consider the parklets in a public meeting setting where there's an opportunity for us to hear from the public and hear from all the affected businesses before we make any determinations. And it's for that reason that we have an approval process that includes a council meeting as part of it. So I encourage anyone who is attending to to comment as we take up each of the resolutions on the specific approvals. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Madam Mayor for a minute because she had a comment as well.
Yes, thank you very much, Council President. Everyone has worked very hard. Obviously, this is, as Council President said, an unprecedented situation, and Council has been very creative in trying to do things that will help the restaurant owners and the other merchants in town, of course. This is a partnership, however, and as you may have heard today, Governor Murphy put on hold indoor dining because there has been a spike in other states and folks are coming into New Jersey, and he's concerned about indoor dining. And there has been an increase even in our state of people not socially distancing and not wearing their masks or any kind of face covering. So as we did when we opened the parks, the municipal parks, when we took steps going forward, we kept encouraging people to wear their face coverings and socially distance. And I asked the police at the time, the police chief at the time, Chief Weck, and acting chief at the time, Bartolotti, to please make sure that they were patrolling these areas and looking out for situations where we had a lot of people not socially distancing. The Westfield area Regional Health Board has given these directives to all of the restaurants that folks are supposed to remain 6 feet apart, which is effectively 2 arm lengths. They are supposed to remain 6 feet apart in line at the restaurant or in line waiting for to be seated at a table, and to wear your face covering if you cannot be socially distant or when you enter the restaurant to use the bathroom or whatever. If you're sitting at your table, it's okay. So I really want all of the restaurant owners to know that this council has worked very hard to try to make it better in this crazy time for you. We need you to help us. We cannot have our police sitting at all the restaurants. So it's incredibly important that you also try to be responsible, make sure that your patrons are behaving responsibly. It's not easy. No one wants to be, telling people what to do all the time. But if we're going to get through this and open up fully, we need to do these things. We need to be 6 feet apart, and we need to be wearing our face coverings. And I hate being the person who just trying to tell people what to do. But this is the reality. We don't love this situation. We're doing everything we all can to make things better. So I implore you, all of you, to be our partners in this. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Madam Clerk, can I please ask you to read the notice regarding, I guess it would be hearings and comments,
Yes.
correct? Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30, and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on Hometown TV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. This meeting is also being streamed live through YouTube. To view this meeting via YouTube, please visit the city website at cityofsummit.org and click on the YouTube icon at the bottom of the home page. While this council meeting is being broadcast live and members of the governing body are participating remotely, steps have been put in place to accommodate public input during this meeting through public notice dated June 22nd, 2020, which provided information for those who wishing to participate during public comment periods at this council meeting. Public comment will be permitted at specific times as outlined in the agenda. Please refrain from commenting until solicited by the council president. For those members of the public who wish to make a comment during a designated comment period, please use the raise hand feature and you will be called upon by the council president. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So this is a special meeting, which means that there isn't a general public comment period. We're going to move straight to resolutions. And I think just in the interest of keeping it simple, I will follow the traditional formula of after it's introduced, I will recognize members of council for comment, then members of the public on each resolution, because we have a lot of resolutions here to get through. So with that, I will recognize Councilmember Bowman for Law and Labor number 1.
Thank you, Council President. Law and Labor number 1, Resolution 7279, is to authorize the execution of lease license agreement, use of the sidewalk at 34, 38, 40, 42, and 44 Maple Street by True Haven Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Fiorino's. Fiorino's has worked with our neighboring businesses to utilize their sidewalks in front of their locations, allowing Fiorino's to expand their outdoor operations by approximately 7 tables. This agreement allows for the sale of liquor on the on-site consumption to be done in these public areas, all in an effort by the City of Summit to provide opportunities for local business restaurants to operate more successfully. The city clerk will issue a permit once New York State has approved all the restaurant liquor license requirements. Basically, we wish Fiorino's as well as all the Summit business success going forward. I move this resolution.
Okay. I want to add one thing to that, and then I'll open it up for comments from members of council. But when we approved the closure of Maple Street for the month from now through the end of August, part of that approval also provided that the sidewalk cafes on Maple Street would not be used by Finn, Fiorino, Roots, and Summit House. So while the roadway dining is in operation, the sidewalk cafe is not. So I just want to remind both the restaurateurs and the members of the public that that's the case. So it's one or the other. So the idea is at some, August 30th, when the roadway is no longer available, then this sidewalk cafe will go back into effect. So with that, are there any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Is that Davin?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I assume that this is probably not the time because you already approved the road closure, but I do want to understand what the conflict resolution would be between people who are doing business on the street and the local businesses, because I'm not sure that anywhere in any of the resolutions it says what the sizes of any of these things are, and I am fearful of it just becoming a large restaurant area that other customers can't get by, and there's no real line of communication for other business owners besides talking to the restaurants, which I hope would work out well. But if it doesn't work out well, what is our course of action?
Well, thank you for your question. Yes, we did discuss this, and there was an opportunity for public comment at the last meeting when we approved the closure of Maple Street. But when Maple Street is closed, the sidewalk is going to be open. So that should not interfere with customers coming to your business. And that was something, when you first reached out to us, that was the thing that you expressed the most concern about. And we've accommodated that. I think we would like the businesses to all work together, but once the closure of the road takes place, there isn't an opportunity to reopen it.
I apologize for the email, and I apologize for missing the last thing. I want the businesses to remain open and be able to do it. It's just that my COVID plans consists of people driving up to my store. So I'll reach out at another point, or just make whatever other accommodations I can.
Okay. Can you go ahead and state your full name for us and also your address for the record? I didn't ask you to do that before. Thank you.
No problem. My full name is Davin, D-A-V-I-N, Chikuski, C-Z-U-K-O-S-K-I. And the business address is 34 Maple Street, Summit Avenue. 34 Maple Street, Summit.
Right. Thank you. And I did want to point out that, while you're saying that your business plan was to have drop-offs on Maple Street, the area in front of your business is not a loading zone. It's not a parking area. It's a roadway. So in effect, what you're proposing to do was not permissible under the other when Maple Street was open. So, we will do everything we can to help you, accommodate this, but this is the access is pretty close. You'd be right up to Fiorino's door pretty much on the side of the road. So I know nothing's perfect, but that's what it is.
No, I know. I will have a lot of equipment there on those days. So I'll work with Fiorino's to figure out how to do it.
Okay, great. Councilmember Little.
I also just want to point out that even under the sidewalk plans, when we authorize sidewalk cafes and outdoor dining, a sidewalk access still must be maintained. I believe it's 6 feet of sidewalk access must be maintained for pedestrians, even with the sidewalk cafes. So even at the end of the Maple Street closure, when the tables might be moved back onto the sidewalk, there will still be pedestrian access on the sidewalks and ability to get to your business.
Okay. Yes, that's fine. It's just going to be hard to maintain social distancing. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay,
that's fine.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Okay, so with that, all those in favor? Oh, Councilmember Little?
I was just told by the clerk that the actual distance on the sidewalk is 4 feet of distance. So I just want to clarify that I had misspoken, and that's 4 feet of access that must be maintained for pedestrians with the sidewalk cafes. So I'm just clarifying. Sorry to interrupt the vote.
Okay. Well, it looks like we've got one other comment. Matthew, I'm sorry, you'll have to tell me how to pronounce your last name. Okay.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, it's pronounced Dickovic. Thank you.
Okay. Can you also give us your address, please?
Yes, it's 47 Maple Street is my business address, the Nassau Consulting Group. I just am interested, first of all, thank you for explaining everything so thoroughly at these meetings. I had an opportunity to join last week, and I think you all do a great job of distilling relatively complex legislation into something, a form that people can understand. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about the new formula that you're using to calculate the liquor license fee. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to ask that question, but that's what I'd like to know.
Well, what we did, it was the square footage. What we discovered was when you do square footage and you're opening a roadway, I guess that gets you a lot of square feet. And, our goal is not to make money on this. Our goal is to help the restaurants. So we looked at what other communities were doing, and some of them were using their outdoor cafe, fee. Generally, when we have an outdoor cafe, we charge a fee based on the number of seats. So that seemed like a fair way to do it, to make sure that we were taking into account that larger establishments would pay more, smaller ones would pay less. And it's something that already exists in our ordinances. So it seemed like the fairest way to proceed. So that's how we came to that. Does anyone want to add anything to that? Councilmember Vartan.
Sure. Thank you, Council President. I'll just be very quick. So there's two points I want to make. The first is that the other reason that doing it this way is fair is that the square feet doesn't net you as many tables as it would before because of the social distancing requirements. The second thing that I'll just mention is the exact fees. I have them in front of me. So it's $116 for 1 to 10 seats, $289 for 11 to 25, $404 for 26 to 50 seats, and then $473 over 50 seats. So thank you to Rosie in the clerk's office for getting me those numbers. But that's exactly the structure. So you can almost guess roughly what you might be able to pay based on the seating, but then the exact amount would be when the permit is actually issued. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from members of council or members of the public? Okay, so with that, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay, so moving on to Law and Labor number 2, Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you. Law and Labor number 2, Resolution 7241 is to authorize execution of lease license agreement, use of the sidewalk in front of the UPS store number 55 Union Place by the Office of Summit, doing business as the Office Tavern Grill. Similar to our prior resolution, the office has worked with their neighbors at UPS store to utilize a sidewalk in front of the location, allowing for the office to expand by approximately 3 tables. All the rules and regulations are consistent with our previous resolution, and we wish all the businesses success as well. I move this resolution for consideration.
I second it.
Okay, any comments from members of council? Councilmember Naidu.
Thank you, Council President. Just to make sure that we're all clear, it's the case that I believe, and Steve, you can correct me if I get this wrong, that this only comes into effect, their usage, after the UPS store is closed, correct? That the hours that or is this during the hours that even when the UPS store is operational?
I do not see anything in the resolution that discusses after hours. I could be wrong. Does not address that at all, Councilman Naidu.
Okay.
It may be that they have, it looks like, Rita, do you have an answer to that question?
I thought it was for them using their sidewalk. The UPS's sidewalk was after they're closed. Just their sidewalk portion of it.
So just in the evenings, in other words.
To use the sidewalk in front of the UPS store has to be when obviously the store is closed.
Okay.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a good, Nicole, did you have a comment?
Yes, it's also on Sundays as well, because they're not open on Sundays.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Councilmember Little?
Thank you, Council President. I guess my question is for Matt Jacoby, is whether we have to modify this resolution, but it's my understanding as well that it would be from 6:30 on weekdays, from 3:30 on Saturdays, and anytime on Sundays, that they would be able to use the sidewalk in front of the UPS store. Do we need to make a modification to this resolution in order?
The resolution, remember, they have a separate agreement with UPS. So they have the agreement with UPS. We're just permitting it to go on the sidewalks. We don't need to amend the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
But just
yes, Councilmember Naidu.
Thank you, Council President. Just so I understand that they may have a separate agreement with the UPS, but we as a city also have an interest in reducing the amount of flow of people there. And I wouldn't want the situation where, regardless of their two-party agreement, we as a city have a different obligation to ensure that people aren't congregating. And everybody knows full well that people congregate in front of the UPS store every single day to drop off packages. There can't be tables at the same time there. It just doesn't make sense.
Can I ask
So I'll go back to Councilwoman Little's question of whether or not we need to amend it.
Well, I would ask that, Madam Clerk.
Council President, if I might suggest, if it's amenable to the city solicitor, that we could put a special condition on the permit itself, if that's acceptable, to spell out the hours of operation.
Okay, that works.
Which has to be displayed. It has to be displayed during the sidewalk cafe.
And that's enforceable.
Yeah, that would be acceptable if you wanted to do that. And it would just set forth the hours that Councilwoman Little put forth, which was after 3:30 on Saturdays, on Sundays, and after, I think, what time did you say on
6:30.
6:30.
6:30 days, after 3:30 on Saturdays, and anytime on Sundays.
Yeah, so you can put that in the permit, so that the resolution that you're passing will authorize it subject to the restrictions in the permit.
Thank you.
Okay, that works. All right, any other comments from members of council? Okay, so with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on. We have a lot of capital projects resolutions. Councilmember Little, would you like to start with resolution number 1?
Yes, and I want to expand on the council president's explanation of what we're doing and explain that the first 3 resolutions that I will be introducing are to expand the execution of lease and license agreements into Maple Street for the 3 restaurants that are using Maple Street that have liquor licenses, and the next 6 are parklet resolutions that we had authorized at the last meeting, but each individual application needs to come before council because we do recognize that these parklet resolutions and the use of public spaces for parklets involve competing interests. So we'll be discussing all these individually, and we will be discussing the application as requested and then what is suggested for voting on tonight. So that's how this is going to work. The first capital projects resolution is number 7280, and it's to authorize the use of Maple Street and the execution of a lease license agreement for the Fiorino restaurant. And this is to allow them to use Maple Street as for outdoor dining and also to expand their ABC license to the Maple Street area that we approved last week at the council meeting. And I ask that we pass this resolution.
I second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Little. I want to point out that Summit is one of the first communities in the area to close the street for dining for more than 48 hours. There's been a lot of chatter about lots of streets that are that have been closed. Those are shorter term, and basically the way the law works is the municipality can close the street for up to 48 hours without approval from the state. Once you go beyond 48 hours, you have to get approval from the state DOT. And this has been a long, ongoing discussion. We've been talking about this for over a month with the state, with the businesses in question, to try to make this all happen. And you know, we appreciate the help. The DOT and the governor's office have been very helpful in this. And but I just wanted to point out the reason we didn't do shorter term closures is because the businesses specifically asked us not to. They told us that a short term closure would not help them and would actually interfere with their curbside business, and it would make their lives more difficult. So we're trying to accommodate what the businesses tell us will be most helpful to them. So I just wanted to make sure that the public understood that. Councilmember Little.
Thank you. I also want to point out that I did it last week, but I want to point out and really thank Mayor Radis, who worked very hard with the governor's office and the DOT to make this happen. This was not easy. And it is correct that we only have a 48-hour closure that is permitted to us normally as a municipality, and to allow for this month-long and hopefully longer closure of our street required a lot of negotiation and discussions with the governor's office and state. And we really want to thank Mayor Radis for leading the charge on that and which allowed us to do this. And we have received those approvals, and now we are ready to move into this next step, which allows them to do business on the street with their outdoor dining and their ABC license.
I second. We appreciate the work that you've done, Mayor. So are there any other comments from members of council on this resolution? Okay. Any comments from members of the public? Okay, that, then all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving on. Capital projects number 2.
Thank you, Council President. Capital projects number 2 is resolution number 7286, and that's to authorize the use of Maple Street and the execution of a lease license agreement for the Summit House to do business on Maple Street and to allow for outdoor dining and the expansion of their liquor license into the Maple Street area. And I ask that we approve this resolution as well.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Okay. Any comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Oh, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry, you can complete the vote and then I have a comment.
Okay.
Yes,
Any opposed?
I realized that I did it wrong. So yes, I know what her comments would be.
Are we, okay. Well, you said Summit House, which is 7287, or is that what we're voting on? You said 286.
Oh,
I think I read I said it was capital projects resolution number 2, which was 7286, but it's actually capital projects number 3.
So we're voting on number 3 right now.
We're voting on number 3 right now.
Okay.
okay. Does that change anything for anyone? Okay, so the motion carries. All right, and now we're gonna hop back to capital projects number 2.
Yes, and
Councilmember
I
Little.
apologize. They're very similar except for the names. I scrolled right past it.
Right.
This next resolution is capital projects number 2, which is number 7287. And this is to authorize use of Maple Street and execute a lease and license agreement for the Harvest Restaurants, otherwise known as Roots, to use the area of Maple Street for outdoor dining and the extension of their liquor license. So I ask that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? All right, any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so now we're on to the parklet segment of the resolutions. Councilmember Little.
Thank you, Council President. Capital Projects Resolution number 4 is number 7242, and this is to approve a temporary parklet location at 61 Union Place and execute a lease and license agreement for the office. And this involves a parklet. The original request was for the use of 2 parking spaces in front of the office immediately adjacent to the fire zone there. The approved amended plan that was discussed at committee and approved by the committee is to give them the use of 1 space immediately adjacent to the fire zone. The next 2 spaces next to the parklet would be used for curbside pickup. This was a discussion that we had, in that using 2 of the spaces out of 5 would be too many spaces that were devoted for both curbside pickup and restaurant space, and wouldn't give adequate parking in that area for the other retail businesses and restaurants in that area. So this was a balancing of the use of the parklet space. They will have that parklet space as well as their sidewalk eating area, and we felt that this was a good balance in this area, and this is what was recommended. So I recommend that we approve the resolution to approve 1 parklet space immediately adjacent to the fire zone in front of the office for their use for dining, and that we allow outdoor dining as well as the extension of their ABC license in that area.
Any comments from members of council? Councilmember Naidu.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to just address generally my thoughts about these parklets, because we have a series of them, and we looked at them in the CAP committee, as the chairwoman said, very carefully through it. As most folks know, before tonight, essentially we've had 1 set of parklets in town, and that was by Tito's and Batavia. And this is a massive expansion of the number of parklets in comparison to what we've had in town. And so from my perspective, we're trying, obviously, as everyone has spoken, to address the needs of restaurants. But it is kind of an experiment, and it's an experiment, for lack of a better word, that's what it is, to see how everything works together. We need, as the mayor said, cooperation of the restaurateurs in the social distancing, and then we need cooperation of those who go to these places in order to make sure that the social distancing works. What I would say from my perspective is that we evaluate how this thing evolves. And there's nothing written here in stone. And if folks aren't going to be able to maintain the social distancing, or the restaurateurs aren't able to do what is necessary, then we'll have an opportunity to review and revise and amend as necessary. At least in my head, we should, because there's real consequences to what we're trying to do. As the chairwoman of CAP, Councilwoman Little said, this is a balancing exercise. No single applicant got exactly what they wanted. Everyone got something amended. And it's not because we can sit and be better restaurateurs than restaurateurs and try to figure out, but what we have an obligation to do and figure out is to try to balance the overall needs of the downtown, the residents, and making a kind of a safe environment. That's our job. And that's what we try to do through all of these resolutions. And so what I say to folks is, yes, we're trying this, but I would also ask all of us to think about, is it working? And is it the best way that it's working? And if it's not, we should be willing to admit, hey, listen, that didn't work. We tried it. It didn't work, and revise and amend as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Naidu. One of the other things that I'd like to add is that that these are dine-in spaces. I think there's been some confusion. I've heard some chatter about, this doesn't say, these spaces, the parklets, don't serve the same purpose as the original parklet, which is a takeout location where you can take out and sit there, or what we're doing in the Bank Street lot, which is you can take out food, get a cup of coffee, sit in the Bank Street lot at the tables and chairs there. This is expanded restaurant space. It's in a sense an expansion of the sidewalk cafe function with table service for these locations. So this is, as Councilmember Naidu said, this is an experiment, and probably something that we wouldn't do in a different time, but these are unusual times and it calls for unusual measures. So we're asking for everyone's cooperation. Are there comments from Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Council President. I just want to echo what you and Councilman Naidu had both said. I mean, I look at these as pandemic parklets. Right? They're not something we would have done in the normal course of business, and they will go away when the pandemic goes away, or before, who knows. But we have to, as we keep saying all along, we have to be flexible and nimble. That's what council is doing right now, and everybody has to work as a partnership here. So I agree with both what you both said wholeheartedly.
We've also made provision for short-term parking spots for curbside pickup. And I would urge all the businesses in the downtown particularly to speak to your employees and urge them not to use the street parking for their purposes. I am hearing that there's a lot of parking that is right now filled when it probably wouldn't be if employees weren't parking there. So if you really, as business owners, you should want to open up these spaces for your customers to come in. And we urge you to take that into account. Madam Mayor.
Just one more thing. After you all vote and decide on the curbside pickup spots and what the parklets are going to look like, the communications office is going to, working with our graphics person, create a map of all the dining outside spaces and the curbside spots so that people know. Because even I was driving around town today and I wasn't exactly sure what was what and where things were. So we're going to make a map, and then we will widely publicize that after all the votes are done tonight.
Great. That sounds great. Councilmember Little.
Thank you. On the issue of parking, we realize that putting these parklets in place is taking some of the street side parking. We have also designated a number of spots as curbside pickup spots around the downtown, in addition to the 15-minute short-term parking. That enables people to come into the downtown, pick up curbside from restaurants, from retail stores, to do quick pickups. Really, as things have opened up, I've noticed as in the last 2 weeks that the parking situation has been more and more crowded downtown, where it was empty before during the pandemic. What is still empty are the parking garages and DeFore slots. So if you're coming into the downtown and you're not doing a quick pickup, I would strongly encourage you to go to the lots, to go to the parking garages and use those spaces and allow for this downtown area for pedestrians, people walking around, people using the downtown for quick pickups and for food and delivery. This is going to be more of a pedestrian area and a pedestrian outside area for people to enjoy during this pandemic. So use the parking garages, use the lots if you're there for more than a quick pickup. Let those spaces be allowed so that all the restaurants and retailers can survive this. And we can get a lot of people in and out of our downtown and use this as pedestrian eating areas, pedestrian strolling, allow for social distancing. If you're going to be there for more than a quick pickup, please go to the lots, please go to the garages.
Okay, Councilmember Hairston.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to echo a thanks for all of the thought that went into working out I like this pandemic parklets, thinking of it that way. I have to say, as someone who walks around town in the early morning, I hope we'll also look at this moment as an opportunity to be more pedestrian friendly, and something that if we can imagine the future where we don't have cars around town and where Summit can be an enjoyable place for our young people as well. So we're all frustrated and inconvenienced, and trying to look at this from a positive perspective. And I love it that it can be an experiment. And if we don't get it right, now is the time to tweak it. But I want to look at that opportunity for us to be more health conscious about parking further away and walking into town. I'm glad you mentioned that, Councilwoman Little. We need to get into the habit of that, and that it will work for all of our businesses, not just the restaurants, that all of our businesses will find a way to make this work, is my hope.
Any other comments from members of council? I probably should have said this sooner, but I also want to extend thanks to our city staff, to our clerk's office, to DCS, police, fire, parking, all of the people who have made such an effort to get these applications completed, to get them reviewed, to make sure that decisions were made in a way that keeps the public safe and makes just preserves our downtown. And I want to thank you all, because I know that you've been working a lot of hours to do this. So thanks for the hard work, and we all do appreciate it very much. So with that, any other comments from council? Any other comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're on to capital projects number 5. Councilmember Little.
Thank you, Council President. Capital project number 5 is resolution number 7243. And this is to authorize a temporary parklet location and authorize installation and execution of a lease license agreement for Piatino Restaurant. Similarly, Piatino had originally requested 2 parking spaces in front of their restaurant immediately adjacent to the fire zone on the other side. And the committee's recommendation is that 1 parking space immediately adjacent to the zone be approved for use as a parklet and outdoor dining space, and that the space immediately next to it be designated as a curbside pickup location. And this parklet location of the 1 space next to the fire zone would be available for outdoor dining, as well as the extension of their ABC license. And I ask that we approve this resolution as well.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? I'd like to say one other thing. I forgot when I thanked people. I wanted to thank the Capital Projects Committee. I know you guys spent a lot of time thinking about each of these parklets and weighing all the different factors and we've all heard from members of the public, and I appreciate you taking the time to give it such a thoughtful review and making these recommendations for us. So if there are no other comments, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on, capital projects number 6.
Thank you, Council President. Capital project number 6 is number 7273, and this is to approve a temporary parklet location at 7 Union Place for Pizza Vita Restaurant. Again, there was a change to the original request. Pizza Vita, in front of Pizza Vita, if you'll know, there's a striped area that is kind of a dead zone next to where the horse trough is, that is striped off because it's not wide enough for a parking space, and then the parking begins. So the original request was to use the striped area plus the next 3 parking spaces. However, that was a use of a lot of the parking in that area. And we are recognizing that there are a number of other restaurants and retailers on that space, on that side of the street. And that seemed to be too many spaces that would be designated in that area. So we are approving the use of the striped area as well as one of the parking spaces for a parklet. And that the next 2 spaces be designated as curbside pickup that would be available to all the retailers and restaurants on that side of the street. And I ask that we approve this resolution.
Any comments from members of council? Okay. Any comments from members of the public? Okay. I think this was a really smart way of altering that application by making use of that hatch marked area that isn't being used for anything currently. So, you know, as we know, parking spots are at a premium. And so this was a really smart way to manage it, I think. So thank you for thinking about this. Any other comments from members of council? Councilmember Bowman.
Yeah, I just have one real quick question. The horse trough area has chairs. Is that designated for a specific restaurant, or is that open for all public?
I believe that's open to the public. Does anyone have I'm getting a lot of head shakes.
The tables by the horse trough are designated for the public. That was the other thing that went into our thinking, is that we would give them this parklet area that was designated just for Pizza Vita, but they do also have that adjacent seating, which is also open for takeout, which is some part of their business, as well as the tables immediately in front of them on the sidewalk.
Yes, Councilmember Bowman.
The reason I ask that is there's a sign up there that is reserving it for another restaurant that we may want to review.
Ah, well, that's very interesting. Mr. Cascase, is that something you can take a look at?
Sure. Thank you, Council President. So as Councilwoman Little said, that area there is open to the public. It's not for any specific restaurants. And we will be sure to be out there tomorrow to look at that sign and see what is meant by that, and make sure that no specific restaurant is claiming that area.
Thank you, Director.
You're welcome.
Okay, so any other comments from members of council? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, and we're on to capital projects number 7, Councilmember Little.
Thank you. I'm double checking all these to make sure I stay on the correct one. So Rosie,
I'm looking too now.
I'm watching you.
I get it wrong.
I sure will.
Then capital projects number 7 is number 7285, which is to approve a temporary parklet location at 10 through 12 Bank Street and authorize installation of same for Sarah Restaurant. This application, they had requested the two parking spaces immediately in front of their restaurant for outdoor dining, which we are approving. However, we are amending it because in their seating plan, they had indicated the use of 4 6-top dining tables for the space, but that did not allow for adequate social distancing between the tables and between the parklet that was requested by Sarah and the dining in the parklet that was requested by Greek Grill. So we are approving the 2 spaces immediately in front of the restaurant, but only approving the use of the 3 outdoor tables. So I ask that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Capital projects number 8, Councilmember Little.
Thank you. Capital projects number 8 is resolution number 7284. And that is to approve a temporary parklet installation at 427 Springfield Avenue for Ani Ramen Restaurant. And I'm just pulling up, because that was amended today. The original request was for the use of the 3 parking spaces in front of the restaurant, the 2 spaces immediately in front of the restaurant, and the space to the left in front of the Willow Street restaurant. When we looked at that, that was using a lot of the parking spaces in that area of Springfield Avenue. So the committee is recommending that we grant approval for the use of the 2 spaces in front of the restaurant immediately after the mid-block crosswalk at the promenade, so that there wouldn't be a dead space between the parklet and the promenade, and then designating the 3rd space as a curbside pickup location. So I ask that we approve this resolution.
Second.
I think that's a great alteration, because I think this will make it a much safer configuration where people don't have to pull in between a bump out and a parklet. And there probably is a little space to be gained at the bump out, if I'm correct. So that's actually a plus. So thank you to Rita for making that suggestion. I think that's very smart. So takes a team to put this together.
Exactly. I want to thank Rita for looking at the application and making that suggestion, because it's definitely an improvement.
Yep. So any other comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And we're on to the last capital project, number 9. Councilmember Little.
Thank you. Capital projects resolution number 9 is number 7289, and that's to approve a temporary parklet location at Bank Street for the Summit Creek Grill. The original request was to use the first space as you turn onto Bank Street as a curbside pickup, and use the next 2 spaces as outdoor dining. And in the seating plan, they had indicated using 2 top tables in each space. Since you can fit at least 3 top tables in each space, we decided that it would be better to use the first 2 spaces as curbside and use the next space as a parklet, in which, in addition to their outside sidewalk dining, which wraps around for Greek Grill, we felt that this was an adequate use of the space and allowed them 2 spots for the curbside pickup. So I ask that we also approve this resolution.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. I just want to remind everyone, if there are any members of any of the restaurateurs listening to this, that you still will need to go to the clerk's office to get your permit, to complete your permit process, which includes a letter of affirmation about maintaining the property, and you will not be able to place your tables out there until the clerk's office issues your permit. And in the case of the parklets and the roadways, we will need to put up Jersey barriers as well for safety purposes. So you should start that process tomorrow, and we will try to work as expeditiously as possible to get everyone up and running, but we need your cooperation. So with that, I don't think there's anything else unless anyone has anything to add. Okay, so thank you all very much for all your hard work. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you.